right. Well, look what happens once again when you try to go live. And thanks to, and I wouldn't even mention the name of the company, but once again, when you go live and then things go awry, and then you got to try to figure to bring it back to save the show. Yes, we ran about 16 minutes late, but unfortunately, on my end, it kept saying, "Hey, are you trying to go live?" I don't think so. But either way, we are live, thankfully, and thank you for everyone who tuned in. Unfortunately, we'll get it back on YouTube on the replay, and so I'll make sure that everybody who missed it will be able to watch the actual replay. So if you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much. Hopefully, all the other networks end up catching back up and catching in. So, with all that being said, welcome to Coaching Sessions here live on Broad Street South, home of your sports network and soon to be growing. So with that being said, we have not spoken to this lovely couple from the Bahamas that I was going to say you guys were on a cruise ship and that was going to be the excuse if we couldn't go live, but you guys
sure, that
works. But seeing the fact that you are at home, Gia and Jesse, thank you guys so much for once again joining me, which feels like forever. As I mentioned before the show, it felt like New Year's and Christmas and everything else passed by. We're in 2023.
Sure.
Not yet. It does feel like it.
It's coming in hot, though. It absolutely is. But it's been quite busy. You know, this month, I think, has been a little busy for all over the cosmos and the universe. Lots going on. But we're just happy to be here, you know, fashionably late. Thank you, you know, technology. But we made it, and we're just happy to be back.
Yeah, definitely. And Dylan, of course, who ended up joining me yesterday for the Eagles win. And I tell you what, it is a fantastic time to be a Philly fan. And yes, because I am in Tampa, I do not forget my Philly roots. The Flyers, first, let me say before we get everything going here, when it comes to the Flyers, folks, don't get too excited. They're 2-0. Okay, it's a long hockey season. And I'm not saying that because of Tampa either. I'm just saying the NHL is the one team that you cannot get super amped for because we've seen teams last year who went 15-0 to start off the season and didn't reach the postseason. So Flyers fans, you know, say hello to Gritty, say hello to everyone else, but don't get super excited because I already know how that's going to operate. But Dylan, thank you, sir, for coming back tonight with me. I do appreciate it as well.
You're welcome. You know, again, I'm excited to be back on. Gina and Jesse, always happy to see you guys. I enjoy getting to be on when you guys are around. So excited to learn a little bit about acceptance. Angel, you've done a lot of acceptance. And obviously, we've done a lot of sports fans, just speaking from the sports side of the house, you know. Angel, you've accepted the Tampa Bay area with your Bucks helmet in the background, and you are accepting that the Flyers are not going to have a good season. So, but yeah, beyond that, we're going to have fun tonight.
Sir.
Well,
yes,
great
well
played.
Beyond that, though, I'm excited to see what everybody has to talk about tonight, and it's Monday night. Let's get the week started.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then the good thing is, I see on the website, if you guys go to the Watch Live, by the way, if you are watching, go to broadstsouth.com, click on the Watch Live button, and it will actually take you to the live feed as I just checked on YouTube. So yes, we are live on YouTube as well, which is a great thing because again, things happen when you don't want it to happen, but that's just technology. It's just the way it works and the way it operates. But nonetheless, as we left off with our last topic, and we're talking about acceptance tonight, which we see that hopefully we accept, as you guys are saying, for technology to go nuts whenever it wants to. But nevertheless, you know, when it comes down to acceptance, for me, I will say, because of my uncle's passing, to put into acceptance here, the tough part is at the age of 68, did I see that coming? Did any of us see it coming? No. Unfortunately, do we have to accept it? Yes, because he did pass and he moved on. Yeah, and then, you know, it's the tough part's going to be with his wife and the kids to make sure that even though my cousins are older, but, you know, they have to accept too that their dad, unfortunately, has passed. It's going to come a point in time when I know that, you know, it's going to be the same way for my mom and dad, you know, and the acceptance I'm going to have when it comes to, you know, it comes to that. And cancer sucks. Everybody knows it. Unfortunately for him, it came fast and furious and it ended up taking him out. But thankfully, he went up to heaven as a saint because that's the way we felt like when he ended up passing from here. But besides that, when we talk about as far as acceptance, when we look at life and we see people just every day and we view them and we hope that they're having, you know, good days. We all have good days. We all have bad days. But we know sometimes, as we mentioned in other shows in the past as well, is that we know in this particular spectrum of our society, and we see what's happening, and we see that this side doesn't like that side, and there's no middle. It's this side and that side. If you walk the direct path down the middle, as we hear about it a lot in church, or we hear about it in the Bible and everything else, everybody tries to do what? Oh, you're coming down the middle. How about you make a far left? Or how about you make a far right? Well, how about if I just stay down the path of acceptance? That's where I would like to stay. But if you don't accept for someone because they have a belief on whatever side that they are, now you're considered disgusted, or you're considered, a bigot, or whatever the case may be, because God forbid you view things differently and you want to accept the person for who they are. But unfortunately, now you're judged, as we talked about before, on your own acceptance. So it's confusing to even talk about and mention. But I don't know, Gia and Jesse, you guys could probably help me out on this one, because what in the world is acceptance anymore? And do we even accept the acceptance?
I love that question. And you're right.
Acceptance.
Acceptance can be confusing, for sure. Right? Acceptance, like, can we accept acceptance? And what is acceptance? And if I accept this, does that mean I'm in alignment with it? For me, I think acceptance is one of the most underutilized or underacknowledged keys to our mental stability and wellness. And it can bring us absolute peace, but I don't think we talk about it enough, and I don't think we think about it enough, right? We so often spend our life in resistance, right? That becomes our norm, and I think we're never really taught acceptance. Going back to that childhood thing that I always do. I'm always going back to childhood. We're not taught acceptance, at an early age. We're taught, these people think like us, so we accept them. Oh, that person doesn't think like I do. We don't accept them, right? And we don't even learn to accept our own emotions or our own strengths or our flaws. And I just think acceptance needs a louder voice.
Yeah, so Gina mentioned, acceptance. The opposite of acceptance is resistance. And we're not taught acceptance, but we are taught resistance in so many of the ways that Gina had just mentioned. And, if we're able to use it kind of like a litmus test, how are you happy? What's bothering you lately? And if you can look at things that are bothering you, you can find the resistance. You're resisting the way things are. And you're, coming up with justifications. You're coming up with tools or coping strategies. But if you're able to step back for a second, and you're able to look at, whatever the question is that's got you feeling a certain way, got some turmoil on the inside, and you can find the resistance. On the other side of that resistance is acceptance. If you can accept. Now, let's be very clear. Acceptance, as we're talking, is not about agreeing with all the behavior or agreeing with what someone has said or what people have done. It's not agreeing to the behavior or the words or the concept. It's an internal process of accepting, okay, I'm going to focus on the things that I can control, how I feel on the inside, and not resist or accept those things that I can't control. And in there lies some valuable well-being if we can practice it and if we can remind ourselves, because otherwise we just stay in resistance.
I like to break it down. I have a very, very simple math equation for acceptance. So everybody get your pens out, and then we can unpack it a little bit. But I like simple, right? Healing and mental wellness does not have to be complicated. Okay. So here's my math take, and I am not a math whiz. So you got the thing, right? Whatever the thing is. So you write down the word thing, right? Can be the person, the action, the Facebook post, the group of people, right? That's the thing. The thing plus resistance equals suffering. Every time. The thing, again, the next math equation, the thing, whatever it may be, plus acceptance equals peace. And it sounds very rudimentary and very simple, but we can break it down with different examples. So I have a thing. I see a Facebook post. Someone is advocating animal cruelty, right?
Right.
That goes against everything I believe in. It goes against my soul. I'm a huge animal advocate, But so I can resist that Facebook post and get pissed off, get mad, start, keyboard firing off horrible things, become in a bad mood. How can people be this way? I can't believe this person is saying these horrible things, blah, 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 blah. And it can ruin my whole day, my whole month, and my whole existence. And there's my suffering. Or I can see that Facebook post, someone advocating cruelty to animals, and say, okay, that's that person's perception. That's not in alignment with who I am. I accept the post. I can't change what I'm reading.
Right.
I can accept it. I don't agree with it. In fact, I completely disagree with it, and it pains me. But accepting the post will bring me peace by figuring out what I can control. I can't control this person's behavior, their mouth or whatever, but I can control how I respond to it. Maybe I donate a little more money to the local animal shelter. Maybe I start an animal refuge, or maybe I just hug my fur babies a little bit.
And switch
harder.
the page.
Yeah, and turn the page.
Well, yeah, it's funny because you bring that up because it's sometimes not only do you turn the page or switch the page, the bad part is and I know everybody expresses themselves a little bit differently. Let me put that one out there because the art of communication, and we've talked about this before as well on previous volume episodes, but we see that people may put a post out there and what you're reading with your own eyes, it makes you question, like, am I reading the right thing? Or are the receptors not kind of figuring out what that person's talking about? Now, what I like to do personally is if that person has, like, for example, on Twitter, they can have like a little envelope that's up there, which is basically a direct message. If that's available, I'll send them a direct message and say, hey, I'm just trying to figure out what you guys are saying here. Is that like, are you throwing shade at someone, or am I reading things wrong? Or is there something of value from this? Because I can't understand what's going on. Then they go back and they explain it. They're like, oh no, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're trying to explain of what's happening. And then it makes sense. But if you read things sometimes real quick, as you were talking about with some pages, you'll look at it and you're like, oh, that burns me. Only come to find out like a couple minutes later, now suddenly there's a redactment, I guess, if you want to say, to that original post. I'm like, okay, so it wasn't what I was thinking. But initially, because I flashed through it so quick, I accepted that it was something on my behalf that I guess I judged to a judgment. But now I also accept what they end up correcting. So yeah, the bad part is that as much as we all love social media, we use it for our businesses, we do it for our everyday life. Some people put a little bit too much information out there. Like, I just went to the bathroom. I didn't need to know that, but thank you for posting it up there because it's something that we don't need to know.
That one, yeah.
we can't.
Right. But it's funny how people can translate things differently, and then it's up to you on how you want to accept it. We all know there's election time in America. We're going to hear different things from different people, and everybody's going to try to sway one person one way or the other and everything else, and 50,000 campaigns. We know it because we can see it already on TV. It's what you want to accept this person. And that comes down to now, before the acceptance, is actual research in that person. The person that's on that ballot, are they someone that I would like to represent my county or my state, and or my district, whichever way. So then in the end, what do I have to do? Accept the results. I can yell and scream and throw a fit and put my arms up in the air and everything else, but does it make a difference? No, I just have to accept what the outcome is. And Dylan, because as much as I like to tease everyone, and I know you just turned 16, we graduated you from 15 at this point, but now being 60 years old, you're 2 years shy away from actually voting. But when it comes down to it, though, in your generation, Dylan, a lot of people, because we see it, it's either you're either part of a group or you're not part of a group. You're either someone who wants to succeed or you're teased because someone doesn't want you to succeed. So for you, for the acceptance that you have in just your age group, is it something that you just have to go with a bunch of followers, or is it something that you can accept for yourself and become that leader to show other people, hey, you don't have to follow the masses?
I think it's very tough nowadays, especially in our age demographic, just because of how much, social media and outside forces have really kind of changed, I think, a lot of people's mentality, especially in the last couple of years, especially with, a lot of this stuff coming out in terms of like racial injustice. Like there's just so much that has changed and that has, driven a wedge in between people accepting each other. And I think we all are going to have our different beliefs. I don't think there's any question that everybody's going to have a different belief, but I think if we could find like common ground, I think that's the most important thing to it. And I would say, like, for me at least, it hasn't been too difficult to find acceptance in terms of like I've had great individuals, and I'd rather have a lot less friends and be accepted by, you say, a handful of people than have everybody accept me and then I barely get to know everybody. I think that's a big thing too, is when you're accepted, don't just get accepted because, oh, I'm just getting accepted with the cool kids. Get accepted, because of people that actually are going to care for you and actually are going to take time to learn about you and the person that you are. And then I think you could also self-accept yourself, because I think if you had too many people around you, like, you just won't be self-accepted. And I think that's a big thing, because first, I think you have to self-accept yourself before then you could, officially be accepted into the group. If I said that correctly, Gina and Jesse, I hope I did.
She just wrote that down.
I had written that down, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I absolutely agree. It all begins and ends, I think, with self-acceptance. And I think once you accept yourself, right? And all, your intricacies and all, then you will naturally be accepting of others.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I think a lot of non-acceptance of others might just be, projected insecurities within our own selves. Right. And someone's threatening your shadow, and a lot of the projections leads to non-acceptance because people aren't accepting themselves first.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'm sorry.
And I think when you had mentioned social media, especially with your age, and I see it too. A lot of
We are getting a little bit cut off there, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure they'll end up coming back, because again, I know before the show went on, we talked about as far as them being in the Bahamas, where the connection was acting a little bit funny. So hopefully they'll end up. Here we go. It might be coming right back now.
Yep.
Hey, welcome back, gentlemen.
And they're back.
Been a long time.
Just about to start singing.
This is a part 2 section of the show.
Yes.
I was like, oh no, I'm feeling unaccepted. They left the show.
I want to jump back real quick to to what Angel was talking about, because it fits in to everything that was just said. Especially what Dylan was saying. That self-acceptance, the way you get there is by that inquiry, that curiosity, the willingness to look at yourself, to see the things that maybe you're afraid, maybe there's some shame around some elements of it. And because if we've got that, if you've got things where you're worried about being accepted or other people discovering, then that is that lack of self-acceptance that's going to prevent you from making the connection. And how do you fix that? Angel had mentioned that he had learned the lesson. Man, sometimes I can be wrong.
Right.
Sometimes I can judge wrong. Sometimes what I'm reading isn't meant to be exactly how I'm taking it. So instead of getting stuck, either not addressing or just running with my thoughts and I'm always right.
The stories you're telling yourself.
Get curious, seek some clarity, find out, what exactly was meant by this. What is all this stuff? Because that's going to help you understand yourself better. in those little intricate moments
Right.
with people.
You know, and
And
like
I think that's a
said,
great tool.
said before, like acceptance, it isn't acquiescing, or it isn't, agreeing with someone else's point of view, or even agreeing with the circumstance. And acceptance also isn't all, rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes acceptance is you're going through something really hard and painful, and accepting that, like, this is really hard and painful right now, and I'm going to be okay with that.
Even Angel's
And-
example,
and,
the loss of a loved one.
Right.
Once you go through the grieving process, which is very personal as to how long it takes and what you have to go through,
Mhm.
the only way to get through it is to find the acceptance that they're gone.
And it hurts.
And it hurts.
It's okay.
And
And and give
I'm going to
yourself
be okay.
permission to feel all the feels.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the toughest part, because as I watch, it's when you wake up with somebody every single day and the person's there and they support you and everything else, and when they're not there, that's where the range of emotions goes everywhere, and that's anyone who's lost a loved one, because you don't know what to do next. You have, what do I do here? Did I do this wrong? Did I talk to him enough? Did I talk to her enough? I mean, there's so many different thoughts that are going through, and you're trying to process everything. But in the meantime, it's because that part of your soul, that person, has always been by your side, is no longer there. And so now it comes down to, again, the acceptance, like, man, this is going to be extremely tough, because what do I do now? Where do I go from here? I'm still young, and even if someone's 84 years old, and their husband or wife, had passed at 85 years old. No offense, but everybody used to think that you're old at 85. Now you got some 85-year-olds that look like they're still in their 60s. So even if you lost someone at the age 84, and let's just say hypothetically that they've been married for 40 years, and they've been in it all that time, and we'll get Gia and Jesse back here in a second, but they've been married all that time. It's just a hard disconnect, because again, you have to look at it as, man, that person's not here. And I know I got to figure out what to do next. And the same way when it comes to like everyday things, we see people,
Also,
whether we're going to Walmart or we see them going to the malls or anywhere else that they're going to. And the tough part is when we see everyone, we wonder if, and we've mentioned in another show before, but when you see someone that might not wear
sitting
something,
in their
no,
perspective
I hear you
spot,
guys.
just looking at the screen, looking at two frozen screens. And
Accepting
wondering.
the.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going there. I was more just wondering.
No, you guys are live.
Are we still?
Yeah,
we
you guys
even
are.
know.
Yeah,
Are we
you guys are.
accepting the technological
you-
glitches, which we all
I don't know.
should be very
I was going to
versed
say,
with
I
at
don't
this
know if they
point.
Well,
know.
we're all very boring right now. It looks
I
like.
know, exactly. So
I don't
we
know if they
are
know. I was going to
still
say, do they
live.
know we're live?
Probably
I don't
not, because when
I
it
don't
came
know.
back, they
I
might be
don't
away
know
from that
either.
room or
Are we
not.
on the blooper
I'm
reel,
gonna, like-
or is this actually?
Uh,
But I think I like what
Can you hear
Joe
us
said
okay?
earlier about
No, I think.
he saw the post and
Hold on.
he decided to seek clarity on what he had read.
Right.
So he actually reached out. And
Hang on, I just
think
sent him a
that's
message.
really important when
He
it comes to
liked-
social
he
media.
liked,
Absolutely.
They're getting a
he
message
liked
now.
your post.
And
Yeah.
we are live,
Oh,
so
so then
um,
we should not.
actually not be do but I think that's really important, that he said, sometimes we do we read things on Facebook and like, oh my goodness, and it really grinds our gears.
What do we
But I
do?
think I love the way, he takes the next step, seeking clarity, right? And just in
Angel, you have
seeking to
any
understand.
ideas?
There's a great phrase that's,
Hang on.
we don't have to agree on anything to be kind to one another.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think within that kindness is acceptance.
Absolutely, absolutely, and just think about that there was probably a time where, in the example that Angel was given, that he did in fact run with his initial perception of what the post was about,
Right.
and later on he found out that he had read it wrong, or that he interpreted it wrong,
Sure.
and there was a lesson, and maybe it happened again and then again,
Mhm.
but eventually it became something that he listened to
Right.
and thought, it happens again, boom,
Exactly.
I'm gonna find out a little bit more, because I remember that time
Right.
where I was wrong.
Right. Well, while we're accepting these technological glitches, let's try to do a little restart and let's see if we can get the gang back
Okay.
together. We are accepting that the internet is being wonky tonight, so we will be right back. Don't anybody go anywhere. We will be right back in, hopefully with Angel and Dylan by our side.
I'll be
2
back.
seconds.
See, this is a great part about live shows. You know? It's a great part about live shows because when things go wrong, this is what makes shows instantly classic. So it's just the way it works. It started with us, you know, in the beginning where it wouldn't connect, and now it took them out and then came back. That's what ended up happening with Fuji not so long ago.
Angel, though, I wanted to continue. You were mentioning, you know, obviously with your uncle passing away and you know, kind of the emotional, you know, feelings you have during that time of grieving. You know, even for me too, recently, I was just in Orlando a couple days ago, and just being with my friends and being with people that I do care about and that I have relationships with and stuff, like looking back on how much fun and enjoyment I got out of that weekend, like you kind of get the same emotion too. Like, you know, like you kind of take for granted, like how much time you have with these people that you are with and your friends and stuff around you. And I think that's, you know, again, that's another thing as well, like which I think is weird with the human mind, because it's like, it's weird to think like in a happy moment that you could feel like that sadness or like some emotion and such in it. But it's also one of those things where it's like, you know, you try to take those things for granted in terms of like being with the people that you love, as Angel mentioned, whether it be they're alive or past.
No,
Right.
Hey, the guys are back. All right.
We're back.
Yes.
And you guys are back. We're accepting the technological internet problems.
Yes.
That, you know, and what Dylan was just saying, you know, we can learn from those moments. The fact that you're aware of that, Dylan, that's huge. And that means that the next time that you're hanging out with friends, there might be a moment where you have the thought that says, man, you know what, in a couple of days, I'm not going to be here. And I'm going to have, you know, some feelings. Maybe it's a little regret. Maybe it's, you know, just kind of missing them, that sense of loss. So I'm going to really be in this moment right now. I'm going to stay really, really present and enjoy this, because I don't want to have that feeling as intensely later on. It's a great lesson. It really is.
Yeah, well, because again, it's, you know, life is short. Everybody knows this. We've seen people where they've lived a healthy life, a beautiful life, and all of a sudden, and we see it now. Matter of fact, on TV, where there's been people they've had, you know, they've between 15 to 27, 37 right now, just going away, you know, and that's tough as a parent. And now, of course, I'll fast forward, and Dylan being 20 years old, he's not a parent yet, thankfully, because he'll have his time when he gets there. But the same way too, like for using Dylan as an example, God forbid it doesn't happen. You know, like I could be talking to Dylan right now, and then all of a sudden he falls back on his chair. And for us knowing, it would be devastating, because it was one of those things that I've learned to grow to accept Dylan for, you know, for who he is and helping me out, and I help him out, you know, and we've gone to games and stuff together. But it would be devastating for me, because I know the type of person that he is. So if he just like up and passes away, and his parents walk into the room like, Dylan, and like, we're live, and I have to tell him, yeah, I just want to let you know that somehow or another he went backwards, but can you cut out the feed, please? Because I don't think everybody else needs to see what's going on there. But, you know, but it's one of those accepting things as well, because we treasure the moments that we have, because we are not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed the next 5 minutes from now. We're guaranteed what we've done and what we're doing currently, but that's about it. And so the acceptance can go so far in a broad range of things that we just have to, like, we make choices in the morning. It's the same way with the acceptance. If we went into that dealership and we know the night before we thought about it, like, man, I really, really like that car, but if I go into the $40,000, that means that my car payment is going to be probably close to $8,000. Can I really afford that? And then you go into the dealership, and that dealer says, hey, buddy, you're back, huh? Go ahead and sign that, because I need that $800 some odd commission and everything else. And here you are, you're excited, you drive off the lot, and you're like, wow, this is great. And in 45 days, that first payment comes, like, what did I do? Because now what you have to accept is, A, you pay for the car, or you tell the bank, so I made a bad mistake, and I'm wondering if you guys can take it back. Sure, we can. It's just going to ruin your credit, but we'll take it back, no problem. So there's a lot of things that, of course, that we can accept if we choose to. Life is one of those things that, yes, we accept the people that we hang around with. If you hang around negative people, there's a good possibility you're going to turn around somehow or another and become negative because that's what you surround yourself with. In the news, the same exact way. They may not give you everything you need to know because they want you to accept what they're telling you. And then it's up to you to say, that sounds kind of fishy. I don't know if I really want to accept that. Let me once again do my own research and figure out what's going on. So, there's a lot of ways that we can tackle this because it is such a big, broad spectrum. And as Dylan said, when it comes to the grieving portion of it, and not just for my own family, for anyone, that is the toughest part. That's even, we talk about that the American dream is always own your home, right? The white picket fence and a couple of dogs. And as we see in the pictures, here's the kids with the sweaters wrapped around their neck and, oh my God, we're great. Well, we know that those are things futuristically that we would like. But if we never get there with that person, and in that person they go, now everything changes in your life because the first year thing is like, how do I move on? This is going to be the toughest decision ever. And you think about the night that you were with your friends and drunk on a fence and you could almost falling on a pitchfork and stuff like that. That compares to nothing when it comes down to the grievance factor of things.
Yeah.
So, it's a wide subject, you guys, to talk about. And it's just the part of just us accepting everything that we do. It is the toughest thing ever in our lifetime. And
yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying before, and I love your car example. You go to the dealership and then, you're all excited. And then, 45 days later, that car payment comes in, right? And you're like, what was I thinking? Right. I think we do spend a lot of time in our own turmoil of resistance to our prior choices. Oh, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done that. I should have made it and that's another thing about acceptance. Okay. Yes, you can absolutely spend time beating yourself up for choices that you've made in the past, but that's in the past, and we really, you hear, oh, you can't change it, but we constantly try to change it in our minds or we stay stuck there. Acceptance can be, wow, that was probably not the smartest choice to make, that, signing up for that car with that $800 payment at the time, but it is a choice, that I made at the time. I would probably do it differently today, but how I'm accepting that I made that choice back then. And I'm accepting that I'm allowed to change my choices today for my future.
And did I learn a lesson from it? And the lessons are abound in this conversation tonight. And the car example is a great one. Yeah, you on it. But once you get to a point where the stewing has to stop for you, and that's that mental choice. That's the choice that Dylan had mentioned earlier about the self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. When inside of you, there just has to be a change. That changes. Look for the lesson. What did you learn? Mm-hmm. We have all made tons of poor decisions that if we really were to sit down and start pinning them out, probably depress us. But in every single one of them was a potential lesson. Maybe repeated a couple of times each one of them, but the lesson is definitely there. And the lessons are what allow us to accept those past misdeeds, bad choices, poor options.
Right.
It is.
I'm so sorry, Angel. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I think one thing too is, especially nowadays, and you see, a lot of times, with parents and stuff, acceptance is tough between the parents and the child, and even the siblings and such nowadays as well. For anybody who is in that situation, how do they overcome that? Kind of maybe that fear of being accepted by a parent. So people come out as gay maybe, or other forms of whatever. So how do people get over that acceptance? Like how not get over that acceptance, but how do people overcome that fear of not being accepted by a family member?
Well, they don't for a period of time,
right?
Without a doubt. Those are some of the things that Gina had mentioned earlier, that that I think the situation, the circumstance that you just lightly described is
Mhm.
probably massively prevalent. Happens
It is absolutely
all the
messy.
time.
Absolutely. And a lot of my younger clients have this, similar issues with, acceptance from their parents. And it's tough. And it starts at home, and it starts the parent for me. I think parents are doing the best they can with the tools that they have.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it goes back to beliefs. I think a lot of parents have, inherit the beliefs of their parents and and inherited the beliefs of their parents. And generationally, those beliefs that are still so prevalent in the parenting realm, they don't work in the world that we live in today.
Yeah.
So your question was, how does someone who's relatively young, or actually maybe even not so young,
Yeah.
fix, adjust, deal with, say those past arenas of resistance, so to speak? You know what? Look, do you need a change? Do you find yourself at one point, at one moment, or a string of moments where the answer to that question is yes, I absolutely need a change? Well, here's the good news. The change is absolutely possible. The slightly bad news is it lies inside of you. So every one of those, exploring the 20-year-old, thought processes of how do I get past what damage my parents did to me? Well, you're not going to change the past, but what you can do is start to rebuild the future. It is about who you want to become. I want to be different. I want to feel better. I don't want to be upset. I want a sense of well-being and excitement moving forward.
I'd like to also make a point. It can be a very lonely road.
Yeah.
I was, one of those children, in my room crying, not accepted by my parents for various reasons, my life choices and who they wanted me to be and things like that. Find your lifelines, find your friends that accept you. What's a good thing that we do have today that I didn't have back in the 1900s is, the internet. Great to connect. You can find groups, you can find friends, there's, therapy online, there's hotlines to reach out, find connection, right? Because our traumas and our pains, are not as bad when we don't have to go it alone. And there's plenty of people. Find yourself a coach, right? Find yourself a teacher, find yourself a mentor, find that person that's willing to hold your hand and help you navigate if you can't, if you're in that situation at home. Find your lifelines and use your resources. For me, thank goodness, I had a solid couple of friends, when I was a teenager into my early 20s that really helped me through. And I could honestly say, I don't know if I'd be here without that. So find your lifelines, reach out to us, we've been there. Really, it's really important not to go it alone.
And if you're at that point, that means that you've started to move into a little bit of acceptance, the need for change.
Right.
And that's beautiful.
I accept, my parents are the way they are. I accept that I'm not going to change them, but I'm going to take responsibility for my life and use the resources that I can to make a change.
No, it's and you're right on all accounts here. And by the way, I want to bring up the past two comments. My friend Larry said, "Well said," as we were talking earlier. And then, hello family, just popping in and say hi. Unpacking my new place.
Wow!
So,
congratulations on the new place.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the big thing when it comes to as Dylan was talking about with when it comes to family. It's completely different from the family values that we were all brought up with. And it is between a rock and a hard place because we know that we want to be accepting people again for who they are. Now, how I value or view someone could be completely different from what my cousin looks at that same person. And so it's almost like that fine line, because you want to tell the person, hey, I support everything exactly what you do. But if I say it in front of this one over here, they're gonna be like, so wait a minute, so what's your deal? And so now it's like, okay, now I gotta accept what's gonna come my way because I'm helping someone else out. But in the meantime, over here in this ear, this person's telling me, no, you're doing everything wrong. So then it becomes like that intersection, right? Everybody's coming at the same time. They know, well, if we all get there at the same time, the car to the right has the right of way. He or she is going to go first. So now everybody arrives at the intersection like, oh, let's see who's here. Confusion, acceptance, intertwinings, and over here, confusion again. Like, oh boy, where am I supposed to go? So it's tough because we do want to accept everyone for exactly how they are. But we also have to understand too, we got to hear where they came from and what they've been through, because none of us know. Now, fast forward to, again, this new society, what we also have to make sure that we accept is that we do not indoctrinate children and nor anyone else in something that what you perceive to be accepted by you to the little ones because they don't know any better. So now you have to take a look at it and say, I'm not digging what's going on here. Let me find out what else I can do about that. Because again, it's different roads that we have to cross. You know, you can take 95, you can do 100 miles an hour if you want to, except the fact that there's a state trooper waiting for you and giving you that ticket. Or you can take that same route at 55 or 60 miles an hour and know you're not going to get pulled over, but accept that the person behind you is going to flare their horns and flash their lights, everything else, because you're doing 55, 60. So all these different avenues, all these different acceptance routes that we can take, it's great because we can look and try to dissect every single time for all these little things and all these different paths that come our way. And the big thing at the end of the day, that when you put your head down at night, you hope that whatever you accepted throughout the day, exactly what you wanted. Or if you made that one little thing like, God, should I have really done that today? Well, maybe tomorrow you can hit the reset, whether it was something you said, something that you did, or as used the example earlier, maybe that dealership is going to give you 48 hours to change your mind and come back and bring that car back, because I accepted that payment was going to be too high. So Dylan brought up a good point, and it's, you know, almost leads to probably into next week as we talk about maybe even lifestyle changes, because that's what we have to accept is all these different changes that goes on, right? Or we don't have to accept them, but we see the lifestyle changes that goes on. And so now we have to decipher, what lifestyle would I like? Am I the 21-year-old that like to party and hang out forever and not have a carefree thing in the world? And now just a sheer or shy 5 years later, now I'm wondering, did I waste my time at the age of 21 and now I can't figure out what I'm doing? And or vice versa. At 21, you may have had it all together. And at 25, for some reason, you just had something that went wrong in your life. And now you want to live 21 as a 25-year-old and vice versa. I mean, there's just all these different things that could happen. So next week we can end up diving into some lifestyle changes, because Lord knows there's a ton of lifestyle changes.
And I love
Sounds
that,
good.
and I think it's a great segue from acceptance, because you know life is an evolution. Your journey is an evolution, and things that you may accept, and that may be in alignment with you at age 20, 25, they just might not be in alignment with you, and then maybe again that they are. And life is fluid, so I think it's a fantastic subject to dive into.
It absolutely is, and I think we'll probably touch on beliefs.
Yeah.
Even though we may have talked about them in the past, but I think that those play such a significant role into who we think we are today, who we were, and who we'd like to be. And that lifestyle changes, I think, is one of those offerings of kind of dissecting as to who do you want to be.
Right.
So look forward to it.
And until then, guys, look for your resistance. Look to what you're resisting in life. Whether it is, oh my God, I can't stand this day because it's raining. Well, you're resisting the weather. Good luck with you. Look for the resistance and see if you can, try some acceptance and see if that brings you a little bit more peace and freedom.
Let's hope so. My friend Larry says, I love the show. Larry, please come back next week. We do
Please come back.
Larry.
Please subscribe, Larry.
Yep. And subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. We're on Monday nights at 8 o'clock minus Monday Night Football if the Eagles are involved, and
Yes.
that's the only thing. And if we have a, the
Or
show glitch that we had,
hurricanes, you know.
exactly. Well, we had the show glitch in the very beginning, but one thing I will say for everyone to come and check out raindancelife.com so you guys can get a hold of this beautiful couple that comes on every single time with us. They are life coaches. And as I explained to everyone, if you're new tuning in, as in my friend Larry here, the great thing about Gia and Jesse is that you don't get once again, could you sit down on my couch and let's talk about what we need to talk about? Because you only have an hour. You're paying me $5,000. In the meantime, I'm going to prescribe some pills and I want to tell you how you feel in the morning. No, that's not what we do here. What we do here is bring the actual natural life conversation, the organic conversation, so that everyone can be involved by any means. And if anybody wants to come on the show as a guest, drop an email. You can reach out on broadstsouth.com. You guys can fill out the form and tell me you'd like to be part of the show so we can talk about what you have on your mind. So it's just not about us here. It's about everyone. So if you want to join the show, by all means, please do so. But again, listen, thank you to the Bahamas being spared, to a lot of places that, we are going through in Southwest Florida, and we still pray for a lot of those folks down there that they'll end up getting a rebuild. Ron DeSantis is doing an amazing job down in Southwest Florida to end the rebuilding. So, I accept him as my governor, and I accept him for everything he's doing for all the fine folks here in Florida. So, Dylan, we appreciate it. Debbie, my lovely producer over in Studio B, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Hopefully next week, everything will run smooth. But when you go live, things happen. So that's the one thing that we have to accept, unfortunately. So, gang, thank you so much. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your night, and we will see you all next week.
Next
Thanks,
week.
guys. Good to see you, Dylan.